Hi, I'm Jennifer Carter, and thank you for joining me on a podcast for parents, teachers, and administrators. Today's conversation should be a good one, and I'm sure it's something on your mind. So let's get to it.
My name is Anthony Mejia. I'm the founder of Mejia Collective. We are a not-for-only-profit athletic apparel business. We're out of Los Angeles, and our social impact side is a portion of all of our sales goes to helping communities throughout the country, all the way from feeding homeless to providing diapers and clothes to foster families in need, and that's ultimately kind of that's what separates us from this very congested field of apparel that we're currently sitting in.
And you are a parent. Can you tell us your daughter's names if you feel comfortable?
Absolutely. I have my 2-year-old Zariah, who's going on 16 already, and I am expecting my second, who is a little girl, and we already have a name, Zyla, and she's and she's gonna be due September, so she's gonna be first week of September.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And how long have you been in business?
So we launched Black Friday of this past year, so 2020. So we're coming up on it's about a little over 4 months right now. We're almost on 4 months.
How's it going? Like, how's business doing business right now?
Yeah, it's going well. I think a lot of the I think I'm already kind of familiar with this route and going with e-com, so I was kind of already familiar with the model. I think the toughest thing is honestly doing the marketing portion, specifically as you kind of get collaborators and influencers trying to come on board. Obviously with social distancing kind of being a thing right now, kind of setting up training and training up commercials and product pushes and getting people, especially because we're an athletic apparel brand. So we would like to kind of promote, the use of the clothes, kind of the wear and tear, all of those great things. So we're kind of limited in those respects. But in terms of actually getting things out and content and, selling products, all of that's going really well. I'm familiar with the business, so it was kind of a easier transition than I say maybe some entrepreneurs might have. But ultimately it's, can ask for more. Always want to be growing quicker than you are, but that's just kind of the bag of every entrepreneur kind of gets into when they first start.
Yeah. What did you do before this?
So I worked for a smaller athletic apparel company based in Glendale. I did that for about a year and a half. It was on a small scale. I had more of a production role. Kind of just oversaw, basic, just kind of the day-to-day stuff that went into actually creating all the way through to delivering the products. And then before that, I worked at a much larger athletic apparel company based in Baltimore. And I did that right after college for about a year. So I've kind of had the full spectrum of just, different levels of the business, which I think definitely helps me now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a little bit further along. Like I told you, we've been in business for 3 years. It'll be 3 in May. But we just opened a new school in November. The podcast is not even a year old. And then we get a lot of traction through our social media, which is interesting. You're like the marketing part of it. I think the way that we market and the spaces that we market in, I think, I don't want to say I wouldn't say we mastered it, but I think we do a really good job of exposure and kind of getting people to know our brand and to know what we do. Our school is very different than most preschools because it's very out-facing, where we do a lot of connections with community partners. Okay. So, for example, later this afternoon, I'm meeting with a young Black female architect who is going to design our outside space, but with the kids' artwork and input. So
very cool.
Telling her like what they want in the space, and then she's designing something that integrates what they want and how they can contribute to the space.
Very cool.
We did a homeless drive and blasted on all of our social media. So our preschoolers made homeless packets. And businesses and parents, like we still get Amazon shipments. We're like, that was in January. Now we're out of room.
Right.
But thousands of masks, hand sanitizers, socks. And what it does is the kids literally write the list out. So
Hmm.
that's how they learn how to write their letters, is they're writing the list out.
Hmm.
They're learning to count because there is a certain number of each item that had to go in each of the bags. So
Yes,
it really, the skills are put to use because they're doing something for a reason. And then businesses and community will benefit from it because, the work that they're putting in, the architect will be able to put this space on her in her portfolio. The homeless organization that we partnered with is able to distribute the goods. So
absolutely. A collaborative effort definitely goes to a lot of places, and kind of you see the benefit across the board. That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I was blessed enough to go to a charter school from second grade until eighth, and then before I stepped into a college prep, private school. And I think for me, like the real world applications of like lessons, like carried me so much further than anything I think, of particularly within my education experience. I have friends who went the traditional just public school routes that was just very much in a desk. You wrote these lesson plans, you turn this in, and that was kind of the monotony of even at third, fourth, fifth grade.
right.
um, so I think the things that were impactful, even as I remember being like third grade, fourth grade, is them setting up like like student run marketplaces and kind of getting us like firsthand experience and kind of
Hmm.
already exposing us to this world of creating products and supply
Hmm.
and demand. So it's really great to hear that's even happening at a younger age now. I can only imagine, 4 or 5 year olds learning these things. It's not just creating great students. It's we need a lot more people. We need better people in the world. So that's
Yeah. I
awesome
mean, I
to
feel
hear
like,
all of the application.
it's a way for the kids to learn about different, like they didn't know what homelessness meant.
Right.
And they learn, I mean, it widened their band of compassion and empathy
Hmm.
because we in San Bernardino, I don't know if you've ever been to San Bernardino, but there's homeless people
Hmm.
everywhere. There's,
Right.
a pretty high level of poverty. And they can become like white noise. You just drive by them and you don't really see them.
Of course.
Now kids that have a different level of awareness, and they can say, oh, we gave stuff to those people.
Hmm.
But the important part of that is they look at them as people and not
Absolutely.
like part of the scenery. So
Yeah.
um I built curriculum. I definitely come into this a little bit ahead of most preschool directors.
Of course. Right.
I built the academic program for a private school. That's what I did before doing this.
Hmm.
And it just, made it more age appropriate and still with that progressive and kind of hands into it experience. So
Yeah. Yeah. And definitely having that experience, I would imagine, when you get to the private school, sector, basically, I don't want to say you teach to the test, but ultimately you understand there are certain checkpoints and certain marks that students are expected to hit. So having that in the back of your mind, maybe necessarily not making that the most important, but obviously understanding that is something that they're going to have to tackle down the road. I'm sure that opens up, a good spectrum for the students. So that's awesome to
yeah.
hear.
Where did you go to where was the charter school? Or which charter school did you go to?
Yeah, I went to Odyssey Charter School. It's in Altadena, California. So they've recently launched a campus. So I was one of the, I was like there from the flagship years of everything kind of like rolling out, them kind of getting accreditation. I remember having to drive to like Laco to like as a part of the school to get them to try to like help fund. And so,
Mm,
it's great to see now. I think now they said they opened that second campus. My second grade teacher at the time is now the director. So to see all that come full circle, I still try to be involved there. I
mhm,
still keep in pretty good contact with them over there. So it's
mhm.
yeah, I credit a lot to that experience that I had. Just even it was much more impactful from second to eighth grade. And then I went on to went to an all boys Catholic private school, which was the complete opposite side of the spectrum.
Which
And
one
then
did you go to?
I went to St. Francis in La Cañada.
I don't know.
Um,
Mm,
yeah, so it's just outside of Altadena. Honestly the two campuses between my middle school and high school were about like 3 miles apart.
okay.
So yeah, so I've had that experience as well. So having both sides, there's amazing parts in both. But like I said, I don't think certain more so the character skills and more so just like the people skills and social building kind of that I got from that charter school. I couldn't unmatch. I couldn't even imagine a different experience or just how much that's impacted me now.
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, and people discount, I feel like I've been in education. I don't look that old, but I started teaching in 94.
Okay.
So I've been in education a really long time.
Yeah.
And this is my first full-on experience with ECE, like early childhood education.
Hmm.
And I can definitely see how what we're doing now really shapes how they view learning. Like kids that go through our program have a really hard time because in San Bernardino, everyone just goes to the local public school.
Hmm.
And it takes a minute because they're like, why do we have worksheets all the time? When are we going to build something? I
Yeah.
learned how to use a hammer and a saw in preschool, and you're just
Yeah.
why are we talking about kites? Why aren't we building them?
Right. Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that's why we have a daycare program also. That's how come they come back to our daycare program, because they're learning some of the fundamentals in a very methodical way in school, but then they come to us for breaks and things like that to really fill out that learning.
Hmm. Did you always have an interest in in kind of the younger grades, or even preschool, kindergarten, or is that something kind of you recently gotten into because of whatever motivation or something that maybe have
Mhm.
happened?
Interestingly, my husband lost his job, and he was pretty senior in his position, and he was having a hard time finding a commiserate job. So we were like, well, we have a little bit of money saved up. Why don't we buy a business and then therefore buying you a job?
Yep.
So I literally Googled buy a business, and I guess God wanted us to get into ECE.
Absolutely. Uh, Everything
And
happens
that's
for a
how and
reason.
that's how we ended up, and
Very cool.
yeah, we went to a business website, and you could put in two like categories, and I put in education because I'm an educator, and finance because he was an equities trader,
Okay.
and our school was the first thing that popped up, and I was reading it, and I was like, intriguing,
Yeah. Something without that push you never would have even considered, I imagine.
No, I
Yeah.
mean, and I love owning my own business, and I would
Definitely.
have never, 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 never done this without God saying this. And the irony is, my husband doesn't even work with the business anymore. He actually found a job closer to his industry.
Okay.
So go
And still
figure.
here and still chugging along. Meant to be.
Mhm.
God is good.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. Like I said, I people were like, "Oh wow, so how long have you loved DCE?" And I was like, 3 years.
Yeah. So 5 Google searches ago.
Basically,
Yeah.
exactly.
Very cool.
And I'm the kind of person where I love learning.
Mhm.
So, like I said, I built curriculum before, and then I was like, well, how can I build a curriculum for ECE? How can I support ECE teachers? And just have full on, the first 3 years was full on diving into the exploration of making ECE better. And then when COVID happened last year, I realized I had a great school, but just okay business. So, I've been again restarting, trying to learn business because that's not my background. Like as a
Right.
school administrator, I had a budget, but I didn't really have to do what I'm doing now.
Of
This
course.
is a
Of
whole
course.
different, it's a whole different
Yeah.
beat.
I think the steepest learning curve, especially for me, but even the entrepreneurs I've spoken with, is like this idea that it's the field of dreams concept. It's if you build it, they will come. And once you get into business, that is you could have the most amazing product in the world, but if you're not getting the word of mouth out there, if people aren't talking about it, if you're not getting it into those hands, there's no way
Hmm.
for people to know that. So I think kind of that is like a real kind of like splash in the face when people kind of get into whatever. I think it's applicable across the board.
Yeah.
So all the way from education to apparel to everyone ice cream shops. So to kind of hear those struggles across the board is definitely unique.
Actually, for us, because I was in private school, so it was
Mhm.
always about recruitment.
Right.
So I actually expected that part. I didn't know about taxes. Like our first year, there was a whole bunch of taxes that I didn't know that we had to pay. And
Hmm.
like we sat down with our accountant, and she was like, y'all are missing some taxes. And we were like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Because we have employees, and
Right. Right.
we were using a bookkeeper, like a payroll company that wasn't taking the taxes out. We had to do that. And I was like, I don't even know how to do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but we figured it out. We were able to recover. Luckily, we've generated enough income that we can pay that back and still, not be dead.
Of course.
But like some of that kind of stuff, figuring out employment stuff, like in terms of employee rights and wage and hour and payments, how to get their direct deposit together, sheets or forms and things like that they need for HR, scheduling, insurance, like all of those brass tacks, because I have an actual brick and mortar and I
Hmm.
have an
Yeah.
actual staff. And even I have a friend who she's launching a business because she does like media. And she was like, well, I'm just going to 1099 everybody. And I was like, no, you're not, because those laws changed this, past January, a year ago, January, and you can't 1099 everybody. So I'm sitting here giving like a little, lesson on,
Yeah, let me just bestow some of this knowledge I just got. Hands-on
yeah,
knowledge too. Yeah.
yeah. So I spent this past year spending a lot of time in conversation with my accountant. Like during the first 6 months of COVID, I talked to my accountant, not even exaggerating, at least every day and sometimes 2 or 3 times a day.
Mm.
I talked to my HR contractor more than that, because there's all kinds of rooms or rules to comply with OSHA. There's all kinds of rules to comply with, payroll and the CARES Act. Um, I'm very, very, very blessed in that we got an SBA loan to finance our business.
Okay.
So we have an actual banker. Like I literally have someone that I can call. And that's something a lot of um, Black and people of color, like what is it, BIPOC businesses don't have that.
Hmm.
I had someone 6 months in, we're applying for the PPP. My banker called me and was like, we can get you the loan. Here's what we need you to do. Do this, do this, do this. And we just follow directions,
Yeah. At that
Um,
point.
yeah, so that we could get the loan and bam, we were, and then the other way around, when we got to the process for forgiveness, they gave us the list, they told us how to fill it out, and we just filled it out, you
Yeah.
know. Um, so I realized during that time that a lot of us, unless you come from an entrepreneurial family, and not like a
Mhm.
lot of times people like their mom has a bakery or their dad is a gardener and they have a business, but I realize having those things versus what I'm trying to build a small, or I'm building a small corporation. I
Mhm.
don't necessarily get my advice from them because it's a different kind of business,
Absolutely.
you
Absolutely.
know. Um and like the little lady in the farmers market who's making doilies and selling pies, she is not where I am,
Right.
I need spreadsheets, I need balance sheets, and
Yeah, absolutely.
I need a marketing plan, I need a team. And
Mhm.
so I didn't realize that, maybe you already have all that stuff, but I didn't know.
No, not at all. And that was, and it's kind of hearing you say it, like, it's all resonating as well, because when you get in these positions, you don't know what you don't know. So when once you start kind of going through the ebbs and flows of the business, you realize, and I think the toughest part for you, especially, or for me rather, but maybe you can attest to it as well, is when you become the entrepreneur, you wear all of the hats. So when you start having to like decide, okay, how much of this am I going to put my time and resources in to understand? Because as as a business owner, you want to basically you want to be able to understand every aspect of your business. Maybe not in terms of the gritty details, but like you said, having positions or people you're outsourcing stuff, like having the bank, and having someone that kind of can talk to, like, hey, this is kind of maybe how tax positioning is going to work for you. You know, those resources are something that I feel like a lot of times in the community, people are almost like, it's like, it's this weird stigma of asking for help that I feel like is only applicable, or at least more so applicable, especially with the business owners who kind of have a hard time like stepping into it, especially of color. So I see that with a lot of friends who are kind of launching huge businesses, and they're trying to run multimedia corporations after being working for another company for 20 years. I have other friends who are trying to also get into fashion and apparel. So I think that kind of understanding of where you're going to lend help and where you're going to get help, and kind of having those resources and knowing how to utilize them, is something that I think a lot of people don't speak to, or a lot of people aren't prepared to kind of take on, when they launch their business. So
Mhm.
especially you at a high level, like I said, being able to get those, from the bank, from all these places,
Mhm.
you're utilizing what you have, and ultimately, coming out on top. It sounds like. So
I
yeah,
don't know
very
about
cool.
on top, but we're
Coming
definitely
out
not on the
as
bottom.
not as unscathed as many, or not as unscathed as would happy to be.
Hey there. If you've gotten this far into the episode, chances are that you really like what you're listening. I'm going to ask you to press pause and share this particular episode with 5 people that you think would really enjoy listening to it. I'm also going to ask that you subscribe to our podcast so that you don't miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening, and now let's get back to the conversation. You hear a lot of horror stories about people of color, and I think that what you're saying is exactly it. Everyone wants to fund their own thing. And maybe someone will be really mad at me for saying this, but I think there's 2 problems. One is we don't ask for help. And 2 is we don't get our ducks lined up in the row, We have them lined up in a row, but not the row, not the this is what you take to the bank row, not the this is going to get you funding row.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes there's an assumption because your business does well, or because it's X, Y, or Z, or you have there is a certain way that you have to present stuff that is the conventional way. And I think sometimes we miss out on funding opportunities because we don't know that way. Mm-hmm. And people say, oh, we don't have access to that. There's enough of us who are in business that you can DM somebody on LinkedIn or Instagram and say, hey, you're advertising that your group just grew. How did you do that? Or you're telling us that your nonprofit got a grant. How did you do that? And just reaching out to people, because we see that we got to help each other. But I sometimes don't think people realize the help they need.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I feel like I'm very, very blessed in that I didn't have a business background. So I went in knowing I didn't know anything, So I didn't go into this saying, oh, well, we already, I knew nothing. So, and I just, was very intentional about seeking out people. My mentors are multimillionaires, literally. You would never know, but they are millionaires, dozens of, when I'm saying dozens, I mean dozens of times over. You would never know. But as I'm talking to them, I'm hearing key things in the conversation, you really know what you're talking about, and you've made a significant amount of money. And it's not even necessarily the money. The money for me is like a success scale, because that's how we measure success, right?
Absolutely.
So you've been really successful. If you're paying one of your employees $120,000 a year, that's an indicator to me. I'm sure you're paying yourself that or more. And that's just from one of your enterprises. So let me pull up a chair and sit at your knee and learn what I need to learn from you. And I don't necessarily think we find and identify people in that way.
Yeah, I think just hearing you speak to it, I think there's this weird balance of people feel like there's people are either gonna go through this experience of I want to soak up all the knowledge I can, utilize every resource out there, because there's not a finite amount of knowledge out there. People have all of these things, and they the thing I found, and I think that most people are surprised about, is they're concerned that people are just trying to hoard this knowledge. Like, oh, I've accumulated this wealth by doing A, B, and C, and I'm going to hold on to this because I have the secret sauce and I don't want anyone to take it. Whereas I found that it's actually the opposite. You get a lot of people that are, yeah, pull up a chair. I want to, I will sit here and tell you everything you need to know, because there's something intrinsically rewarding in bestowing that knowledge, especially on someone that you feel like you connect to, whether it be for whatever reason they're in a similar industry, or they come from a similar background, or they run through just different problems that you've run through as well. So I think being able to kind of lend that hand out is awesome, but I think people also too need to want to accept it. I think people have to come and say, hey, you know what, I don't know, and that's okay to not know. But I think kind of, if you have a pride thing where it's, there's something commendable about bootstrapping a business, and I agree. If you kind of work through, but that is not the only way. And to be quite frank, it's probably not the best way to get it done. But kind of putting pride to the side and being able to like, hey, what do I need to get these things going? Getting those ducks in a row the way they should be, not the best way for you. You
Mhm.
know, and sometimes you have to eat crow, and sometimes you have to come and just say, hey, this is what I need, and this is kind of where it is. And you
Mhm.
recognize in individuals that they might have something that you can utilize. Take what you can, utilize what you can, and then you say, okay, well, maybe
Mhm.
that worked for them and not for me. And like you said, with business, you're restarting constantly. It's constantly just a buildup. So
Exactly.
hearing you speak to it at a high level, it's applicable all the way down to, like you said, the lady at the supermarket, or sorry, at the farmers markets, or all these things that I think people kind of,
Mhm.
more so characteristics that people go into business with and want to speak to, that maybe just have a hard time doing.
Anthony, you said bootstrapping isn't necessarily the best way, but I would argue I definitely have been bootstrapping.
Hmm.
Maybe I have a different kind of boot,
Yeah, no, I feel you.
because I
I don't
have,
necessarily mean
you know what
this.
I mean?
Go ahead.
Like,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
think a lot of times people don't realize if you're getting into business, no matter what, no matter which angle you take, you are doing it by bootstraps. You are pulling
Hmm.
on
Hmm.
because you have to figure out your business. Unless someone, inherits a fully running business with a full infrastructure and all you have to do is sign documents, you have to figure it out,
Absolutely.
because you're constantly making decisions, constantly. I made a decision yesterday and instructed somebody, and then I drove and I had a chance. I was out in San Bernardino. I thought about it. I slept on it. I woke up. I was working out, and I was like, I think I want to go back to that person and say my initial reaction was probably through an emotion and
Hmm.
not through reason. So I want to re rethink what I said. I
Uh-huh.
mean, imagine how much thinking that one decision took. And we're making, as entrepreneurs, decisions like this all the
Okay.
time,
Absolutely.
every day, all the time, how you interact, who you make a network with, who to do, all the time. And so I don't necessarily even think that people put a real value on the thinking, and then the hard work is not always lugging stuff around. Sometimes the hard work is thinking through challenges. And like you said, eating crow and going back and saying, on further reflection, this perspective is better, or you were right, or we need to collaborate, whatever. But it's a revision.
Hmm.
And I feel like that is the work that's the hardest part. I don't know if you have employees, but that's what I find, like working with a lot of people, because we have a lot of employees.
Right.
So it is constant. My brain sometimes is like, you know what? That's why I go to bed at like 8 o'clock and I watch Murder She Wrote.
Okay.
And
Completely unplugged.
what
Yeah.
what what brain cells am I using for that? I sit in my bed. I'm like, oh, someone else got bopped in the head and cabin.
uh,
It's simple.
Yeah,
you
for
know.
sure, for sure. I will say, I will say, wifey got me on Scandal for a while, so I will say that was like, at first I was like, I'm not watching this, and then like 3 episodes in, I'm like, oh, so we're on tomorrow, right? So yeah, absolutely needed.
Yeah.
Uh, the great thing about that is too, and I think for an entrepreneur, especially, I mean, maybe you can speak to it as well, but it's you can never turn it off. Like as much as you have that on the line, and like I always say, like like I have to have conscious, and wifey will pull me to the side and say, like, okay, you need to put your phone down for 30 minutes. Like you're be in this moment, be in this moment, and you're like, even in that 30 minutes, you find yourself like, all right, I'm gonna consciously put the effort, and my attention will be here. But as you kind of know, like it's just, oh, I had this idea here. Oh, this maybe this way. But even speaking of what you just talked about, you do it retroactively. It's like, oh, I made that decision earlier today to to go ahead and decide to reach out to this to this contact and try to see what kind of you can come from. Maybe I should have maybe approached it differently, or maybe I should have given more, given less.
Yeah.
So like that constant thing, I think that's like the I call them happy stressors. Those are the things like you enjoy being stressed about. It's like this weird, like I think if you're an entrepreneur, you kind of approach that weirdly, like you enjoy that stress. Like there's something like that, just you get out of it.
And nobody around you is digging it.
Understands. No, 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 no. So
Your
like, what do
partner is
you
like, I don't want to talk about that. That's why my husband got out of it. He was like, that is stressing me
do?
out. Why are
Yeah.
you talking about, these things? And I'll just like blurt, like, he'll say, oh, what's going on? And then I'll go through like 75 things. And he's like, oh, I'm so tired. And all I had to do was listen.
Absolutely, absolutely. That support is different though. I think because at a certain point you almost don't, the equal minds there. I think you kind of just want the like, all right, like the ear is appreciated more than anything, especially when it comes from your significant other. So
Mhm.
so I'm sure, but being involved in the business, especially, I can imagine there's hey, this is cool, this is cool, this is cool, and that's sometimes all you want. But I think for me, I think the transition into being a parent and then also an entrepreneur kind of at the similar time has like I couldn't imagine like a better experience. Like while all these changes are kind of happening and kind of incorporating all of this into it, I love just the progress I've seen just personally in the last several months. And I think even, kind of excited to kind of incorporate it too.
Mhm.
Yeah. So how about yourself? Do you have children?
I do. I am on the other end of this. My kids are grown, but yeah, he just turned 23 yesterday.
All
And
right. Happy
yeah,
birthday.
that's
Happy belated.
yeah.
Very cool.
So he's on a business trip in Palm Springs. So my phone keeps buzzing. We're trying to figure out how to squeeze in time to drive out and see him.
Hmm.
And then we raised one of his friends who came to live with us when he was 16 and he's 25. So he's trying to just figure life out. But I am very much, we are empty nesters.
And I'm sure not too mad about it either.
You kidding? I told you I'd go to bed at 8 o'clock.
No, I 8 o'clock usually starts like bad time for me, so I hear it. So yeah, any type of like screen watching or anything that goes on for the hour of the day is, I guess that's the solace. I know I always say like, oh, I brought my assistant with me. Usually my daughter will come with me on certain meetings, or we'll have like to run to a factory or mill to check things out. So
Mhm.
she's always excited. So they always ask me, "Do you have your assistant with you?" So it's
Yeah.
a cool part of the process.
Yeah, and it's cool to integrate. That's why I've been working with Ian, is because I want him to understand how the business works, because
Hmm.
at some point, like, this is growing and I would love for it to be a fully operational enterprise for him to eventually take on. And so he doesn't want to work for us, which is fine, because he said he wants to be a part of bigger businesses and see how they run. So when he comes to us, he can implement those things and make our business even bigger.
Yep. Yep.
So, but at the same time, I think it's important for him to know the key players, know what happens, understand, because we really are social impact. We're trying to raise salaries of our teachers, trying to do all this community stuff, trying to support people. We give out charitable donations. I'm on boards. So, and it's all to make an impact on communities. So
Hmm.
having him know what we do and how that works is really important to us, because we always talk about generational wealth. um, and it's interesting, if you ever have a chance, Google generational wealth, and like 90% of what you read is about how we don't have it,
Hmm.
and only 10% is about do one, two, and three to get it,
Yeah.
and what it means. Um, I was looking up statistics about the likelihood of family businesses being carried on to the second or third generation. 90% of family businesses do not continue with the second generation. Something like 90. Yeah.
Wow.
So, when we think about generational wealth, we normally think about like estates that we leave behind. But what about if we were like a Johnson and Johnson, or like a BET, where it started with mom, it's carried on, it's been a family thing for a while, kids are involved. I feel like that's an aspect of generational wealth that we sometimes miss,
Hmm.
that we can capitalize on and teach our kids, like, from a very young age, this is mom and dad's business. This is why it's important to be in our community. This helps you, but more importantly, it helps all the people in our community. And this is why.
Absolutely.
Um, and then, helping them grow in the business from there.
I think you always like, it's always interesting for me to hear like, someone who gets that entrepreneurial bug very early and kind of how they like cultivate those skills and kind of they just build upon it. And then people who just like, they kind of, maybe did the rat race forever, kind of just, went through the natural steps and then got to a certain point in life where they just like turned it on and just said, you know what, I can do this and launch a business.
Yeah.
So, to hear
Or where God just tosses you in.
Or you get a Google search that just, here we are.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's literally like Daniel in the lion's den. And I was looking around like, wait, I'm in with lions.
Yeah.
Let me figure this out.
Very cool.
So yeah, but yeah, it's been good. Like, being in business is good. And I just want to say thank you for joining me and chatting on my podcast and being a part of this conversation. I just want to say thanks about that.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was exciting to be a part of it.
So that's our conversation for today. I hope you found some information that was interesting or a perspective that you hadn't thought of. If you like what you heard, or even if you have some feedback, put a comment in our comment section. Be sure to like our page and make sure that you subscribe so that you can hear when the next video comes out. Thanks so much again for joining us.